Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another CARS Reading Skills workshop of the Jack Westin MCAT podcast with your hosts, Molly Kilty and Jack Westin. Jack, it's great to see you or to see your stick figure. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing? How's everything?
I'm doing well. Can't complain when we get to, be here providing high quality resources to students. Never a bad day.
Right, right. I'm excited about this passage because I finally feel like we have an easy one. Right.
Yeah.
It's really easy to read. It's like a time machine. We're going back in time, like talking
Mm,
about something like everyone uses now. It's like universal, but at the time it was kind of new. So
yeah.
it's interesting to see how people, argue or have opinions on things that we don't even think about, right?
Yeah.
Like we take it for granted. So.
Yes, it's going to be a really fun one. If anyone listening, if this is your first CARS reading skills workshop, basically the goal of an episode like this is to walk through one of our CARS daily passages that we put out on our website every day, just like it sounds, for free. This passage in particular is called Internet Instruction, and it's the daily passage from July 23rd. So we're going to read the passage together. We'll go through each sentence. We'll talk about how to read a passage like this effectively. What should we be pulling out? What ideas should we be tracking as we read? And then ultimately, you guys will be set up to go on and answer the questions. We will include the link to this passage in the description. Again, this is one of the passages that we put out for free every single day. So you could also just navigate to our website, jackweston.com, and you can access this on the homepage if you're listening to this on July 23rd, the day the episode is posted. If not, again, the link will still be accessible, and we encourage you to check out the questions after we finish reading. But yeah, like you said, it's interesting. This passage is called Internet Instruction. It's all about the use of the internet in schools, and we don't even think about it anymore. Now I feel like, we're way past just the internet. Now we're talking about AI and instruction and chat GPT and we've
Yeah,
we've moved
right.
on to much bigger problems here or bigger, topics of discussion.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like, at the time, the internet probably, and I think this was written in like 2000, right? And we don't know that we going into it. So we don't, that's another thing you should realize, guys, is you never know when your passage was written. So it could have been written 30 years ago. It could be written 25 years ago, which is I think the case for this passage, or
Mm.
40 years ago. Things are different. Mindsets are different. Right. And
Mhm.
even the writing style may be a little different. And it's all very dependent on the author. It's subjective. So come in with an open mind and just embrace whatever you're reading and don't bring in outside knowledge or your own opinions. That's like the hardest part about reading. The other hard part is understanding what you're reading, right? The
Mhm.
comprehension, which is coming down to practice
Mhm.
and training sessions like this, right?
Yeah.
Courses and podcast episodes like this. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. And sometimes staying interested, but that's something you could practice as well.
Right.
Luckily, this passage is a little bit more interesting, probably to a lot of us. Um, but let's start. Let's go ahead and dive in. So again, we'll start with first sentence of paragraph one. It says, over the past decade, computer-related instruction has made an indelible impact on how students learn and how instructors teach at colleges and universities, both in the United States and abroad. Okay, so first sentence, we always want to reflect, but I do think that this sentence provides an argument, right? We're stating that this computer related instruction is basically changing the learning environment, right? It's changing the way we learn and it's changing the way that we teach. So, computer instruction changes education is kind of the argument here. Um, we've got different settings, US and abroad. We've got teachers and students, but we're discussing computer related instruction.
Right. I think this is a very simple sentence, right? Pretty
Yeah.
straightforward, talking about computer related instruction. But there is one word that I know that a lot of students who are, kind of insecure about their reading skills will latch onto and worry about. And you shouldn't. You really shouldn't, right? You could get away with just erasing that word, indelible. right? So if you
Mm,
don't know what indelible means, you're still fine because it says made an impact, right? So
yeah.
if you get rid of that word, you still know it's something probably impactful, right?
Hmm.
Indelible just means you can't easily like forget it or can't easily remove it, right? It's
Hmm.
it's important, right? Made an important impact on how students learn and how instructors teach. So focus on the bigger context rather than just one word. You're not going to know every word of every passage you read, of every paragraph or every sentence. So focus on the bigger picture here, which you can easily get.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially for those of us who are less comfortable with vocab or who might be learning English as a second language. Okay, let's look at sentence two. While distance learning and teleconferencing technologies continue to provide convenient and efficacious means of college level instruction, it is presently the internet that is spearheading the new technological paradigm in higher education. Okay, we have a couple more terms that maybe some of us are less comfortable with, but I think the sentence overall is still relatively easy to pick and choose from, right? We're talking about the internet. The internet is spearheading this, right? So the internet is important with higher education. That, again, we're still talking about how, the internet is computer related instruction, it's impacting higher education or learning and teaching. I feel
Yeah,
like we're
yeah.
still
Well,
we're
when we think
still
of
in a similar lane.
Yeah, when we think about computers, we think about the internet, right? And so
Uh-huh.
me, when I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, well, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like internet, computers. I mean, they do mention teleconferencing. Like, I can't imagine teleconferencing with a phone, like learning through a phone, but I mean, it's possible, I guess.
Hmm.
In this case, it's just kind of the same stuff, but it is being more specific, talking
With
about the
the
internet.
internet.
Now, I don't know if that's something they're going to expand on, if it's more about computers, if it's more about the internet, or both. We got to keep going, but it's more or less along those same lines.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. So pretty straightforward paragraph. We just want to track that computer related instruction is changing higher education, right? How teaching and learning occurs.
Right. And it's, mostly the internet, right?
Yeah.
That's how they want you to think about the computers.
Absolutely. Okay, let's look at paragraph number two. It says, indeed, at present, the internet is the most important change to higher education instruction, and college and university administrators have been challenged to incorporate computer based technology as pedagogical tools. Okay, so again, we're stating present or internet is the most important change. So it's the most important change. We're trying to implement it, right? We're kind of continuing to discuss the internet, but now we're specifically stating this is the most important
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Last paragraph, excuse me. The first sentence was just talking about how computer related instruction was changing how students learn, right?
Hmm.
It's made an impact. But now it's saying it's like the biggest and most important change to higher
Yes.
education instruction.
Yeah.
Way more specific and
Hmm.
different. It's a different argument, right?
Yeah.
We never said it was the most important change to higher education. We just said it's making an impact in education.
Yeah.
So don't bundle this into the same idea as the previous paragraph because it is unique, right? It is they're making it clear that it's the internet. They're making it clear that it's an important change to higher ed. This is the hard part about reading easy passages is our minds may jumble everything together and think of
Hmm.
it as like a newspaper article when we read, right? You have to be very precise and be very careful.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so this is pretty straightforward, but we do need to make it clear like this is an argument.
Hmm. Yeah. We're not just saying it's important, it's the most important.
Right.
That's a pretty big difference.
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at our next sentence. It says, for example, university libraries currently offer multi-database CD-ROM stations. Yes, you're right, Jack. I think this was written a while ago. Online journals, full text retrieval, and internet access. Okay, so this is kind of a list. It's just ways that, in this case, university libraries are adapting to computer-based instruction. Um, I'm not really thinking any individual component of this list is more important than others, but I'm understanding that libraries are adapting to computer instruction.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Moreover, many libraries offer off-campus access to library holdings and database searches. Okay, to me, just sounds like, again, libraries are adapting to computer-based instruction.
Right.
All right, with this apparent transformation from, quote, print learning to, quote, electronic learning, according to Michael Hodes, quote, it seems incumbent for both administrators and faculty to harness the internet as a prominent instructional medium, end quote. So now we've got a specific quote from this individual, Michael Hodes. Basically sounds like we're saying everyone should, or administrators and faculty should adapt to computer-based instruction. Seems like
And we
we're,
should keep track of this person, right? This person
yeah,
supporting this idea that the internet is probably a very important change to higher education, right?
agreed.
The part that might stump students is the word incumbent, but again, you don't need to know what that word means. It says it seems blank. You can just ignore the word for both
Mhm.
administrators and faculty to harness the internet as a prominent instructional medium,
Yeah.
right? It's similar. It's along the same lines. So don't freak out if you don't know one of these words. You can probably guess what it means. In this case, it probably means necessary.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Context can give you so, so much. Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so that is the end of paragraph number two. Really, the majority of this paragraph is saying the same thing as the first sentence, right? So the internet is the most important change. Again, different from just it's important or it's impactful. It is the most important change in higher education. And then we're talking about how we adapt. We're talking about the libraries. We're talking about Michael Hodes. Those are all things we'd want to tie with paragraph two. Okay, let's look at paragraph number three. It says, no doubt the internet affords numerous benefits for instructional applications. Okay, this also, we're still talking about the internet, but I feel like a lot of students are going to read right past this too, right? We've said that it's impactful. We then said it was the most important change, but we never directly stated that it's beneficial. Like, we never said it was a good thing. We just said it was important. This is now saying that there's no doubt, so it's obvious that the internet has benefits. It kind of feels like there's a but coming, but I don't know. But I'm getting this is an argument that the internet has benefits for instruction.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a good sign. I mean, like, it hasn't been a hard read. All we've been doing is talking about computers and internet and how impactful they are. Now it's more general, right? Internet
Mhm.
affords numerous benefits for instructional applications. So, kind of going back to that kind of general idea in the first paragraph. But yeah, nothing too difficult.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at our next sentence. These include quick and remote access to information slash instruction, convenience, adaptability to change, speed of communication, and the ability to reach large audiences, instant feedback, facilitation of group work, and cost savings. So I know from the students that I've worked with, whenever students see a really long list like this, they worry like, do I need to track every single one of these? And the answer is no. I mean, you're engaging with it. These are all benefits. They're all benefits to having access to an internet with instruction. So they're all similar in that way. They're all benefits of having internet access. Read it, internalize it. You're visualizing it, but you don't need to memorize every single one of these benefits that they're listing.
I
It's
think that's
important they'll come back to it.
That's the best advice. Like, just visualize it because if I see a random answer choice that presents it, at least I know it was in the passage and
Yeah.
not random that the author never brought up to trick you. Right?
Hmm.
So just absorbing it and knowing that it existed by understanding it is more than enough. And
Yeah.
lists are not important enough to write down,
Yeah.
right? Examples, right? I would keep track of those. I either highlight them or write them down. This is a list is not an example. These are not examples,
Mhm.
right? So like an example is usually drawn out, it's usually very detailed, very specific. This again is a list, it's not at that level. So I just
Yeah.
comprehend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about more specific, objective ways to tell the difference between true examples as we define them versus a list, right? Again, this sentence says, for example. That doesn't mean it's an example. Those are all things we talk about in the course. If you're interested in going deeper, check out our CARS course or our self study, and you can take a look behind the curtain at the way that we do things here. This is pretty cool. But again, list, not something we need to track in detail. Let's look at our last sentence of paragraph 3. It says, despite the excitement and benefits of internet use for didactic instruction, however, internet instruction needs to be improved before it can be successfully adopted widely across the academy. Ah, okay. Pause. As soon as I heard, however, my alarm bells were going off, especially despite the benefits, despite the excitements and the benefits. So, yes, it's exciting, it's beneficial. However, it needs to be improved. This is really important because we're not just saying it's impactful, we're not just saying it's important, we're not saying it's beneficial. It needs to be improved before it can be adopted. This is a new layer to this argument that we have not seen yet.
Yeah, it seems like the author is about to mention negative stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
that contrast words are really important. But yet,
Mhm.
however, those are the common three. But yet and however. Those three I always look out for. And in this case, they're using however, right? However
Mhm.
suggests a change in direction, right?
Yeah.
And everything before it is maybe still true, but what's after the contrast word, so whatever is after the word however or but or yet, is more important to the author,
Yeah.
right? It's the direction the author is heading in.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be really careful and be aware of that. And in this case, it seems like, the author isn't completely set on internet instruction, at least not yet. It needs to be improved.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say the author is against it, but I do think that the author has some reservations, and I need to know that that's a nuance that they will test us on, right?
Mhm.
Knowing, hey, I need to know like that the author may not be completely sold on internet instruction just yet.
Yes, absolutely. So in paragraph 3, which is what we just wrapped up here, we said that it was beneficial, right? And we definitely have support for the idea that it's beneficial. We got our list, but we're saying that it needs to be improved. So let's see what paragraph 4 does to help kind of flesh out this new developing argument. So, paragraph 4 says the American Psychological Association's Monitor May 1999 issue reported on a national survey of 600 higher education institutions where one-third of faculty use internet resources to varying degrees in their teaching. We see a semicolon, which is a nice pause point, but really there's not a lot of argumentation going on so far. We're just establishing that we've got a study. I'm curious because we've done a survey. Some of us are using internet. I'm expecting to possibly see some consequences or some differences between internet and or internet-based instruction and non-internet-based instruction. Again, keep in mind, we're saying it has to be improved. So let's look at what the results are. So we'll keep reading. However, many academic psychologists question the expense and time needed to develop an internet based course or program, as well as the potential increment in student learning. Okay, this is not being super direct, but it kind of sounds like we're stating maybe some of those drawbacks. Maybe it's expensive, maybe it's time or time intensive. Maybe it might not even be that helpful. Again, it seems to relate to the idea that maybe we need to improve it before it can be widespread.
Right.
So we've got a specific study that we're citing now. This is further supporting that claim that we made that it should be improved first. Okay, paragraph 4 continues. It says in the April 9th, 1999 issue of the Chronicle of Higher Education, Geraldine Ford highlights some of the inherent difficulties with the practice of, quote, outsourcing to distant learning companies and the unresolved problems in ownership and copyright of instructors' online courses, end quote. So these are more problems, more possible areas for improvement. And we're quoting from Geraldine Ford now. Um, Jack, do you think we need to be tracking the specific possible areas for improvement? We didn't really make a direct claim. We didn't have like a simple, easy sentence that presented it, but we kind of have a couple different issues that we're discussing in paragraph 4. How important do you think those are?
See, this is the point. This is why keeping track of things is so important. Like, I
Hmm.
know it's not, I know it's in paragraph 4, right? It's
Hmm.
like I know they introduced the idea of problems or the fact that they need to improve internet instruction in paragraph 3. So why
Yep.
would I need to write this down? I know if I have if I have a general structure of the whole passage, I know where to look back to if I need it. And I also just comprehend it. I understand what they're saying, right? They're saying
Hmm.
any academic psychologist question the expense and time needed. Okay, so there's some sort of issue with time and money when it comes to making
Hmm.
internet-based programs. And then also this idea of that Ford is presenting, Geraldine Ford. I would keep track of Ford because if they care enough about whatever Ford said, they'll refer back to that person. So they'll mention
Hmm.
Ford's name. They'll say, "Hey, what did Ford say?" Right? And that's easy
Hmm.
because I can easily find Ford in paragraph 4 and see exactly what they said. So the answer is I wouldn't. I think it's too
Hmm.
much. I think it's more important that I understand the bigger arguments and these smaller kind of things that they're mentioning are kind of fitting into those arguments or anchors, right? I'm using the arguments as an anchor to keep track of the structure of the whole passage.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, for anyone listening who is completely unfamiliar with the Jack Weston CARS strategies, we do keep track of the major ideas that we find from each paragraph in what we call a map. If you have never heard of our mapping strategy, come see us in our free classes that we hold each week. You can find them on jackweston.com. We do live CARS like basic lessons as well as science lessons and admissions lessons and other things every single week. But if you're curious about the mapping strategy and the way that we track the ideas that we extract from every paragraph, definitely come see us in one of those live classes. Totally free. And you'll get a lot more out of episodes like this because you'll know how to keep track of the ideas that we're extracting from each paragraph as we go through the passage. Okay, so now that we've gone through the first 4 paragraphs, let's take a look at the remaining 3. Again, kind of a longer or passage. Here is the beginning of paragraph 5. So it says, furthermore, in recent years, many authors have anecdotally discussed some of the shortcomings and obstacles of embracing the internet in higher education settings. Okay, so it sounds like we're going to continue to talk about shortcomings and obstacles of the internet. Um, I didn't get, we didn't state any of the specific shortcomings or obstacles or areas for improvement, but clearly we're going to continue to focus on that in this paragraph.
Right. I mean, if this is the beauty of reading the entire passage. If you just read the first paragraph, or even just the first 2 paragraphs, you're now not keeping track of the more important argument, which is
Hmm.
that there are some issues with the internet instruction.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is why you should always read the whole thing, and you never know what is the most important. Typically, the more important arguments are brought up somewhere in the middle. I can't tell you if it's the third or fourth paragraph. Completely depends on the author, right?
Yeah.
But typically, they use the first couple paragraphs just to introduce the topic, and then go expand on it in the middle, and then kind of conclude somewhere, right, at the
Hmm.
end. So got to read the whole thing, right? And
Yep.
and so far we know it's sort of the same thing. And when they mention shortcomings of the internet, we know this is exactly what we talked about from the third paragraph, continuing into the fourth and fifth paragraphs.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, let's see what these shortcomings are according to these authors. It says such problems include lack of privacy issues, poor/limited interactions, technological difficulties, in parentheses, for example, server failure, overloaded circuits, dead links, software limitations, increased time commitment, in parentheses, of faculty, limited faculty knowledge, training and support, technological rather than content focus, isolation, and archival/retrieval concerns. Huge list. Okay. Same thing with the list that we've read earlier. I don't care to memorize this whole thing. right? I'm getting that these are more problems with the internet. Again, I think a lot of us have taken online coursework. We've kind of experienced a lot of these things.
Right.
None of these are super surprising, right? There's nothing that like, wait, what? Like it all kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so not something you need to memorize or track in extreme detail.
But you shouldn't skim it either,
Yeah,
right?
true.
If you're just skimming this, you're screwed because they will mention some of these things,
Yeah.
right? Server failure. Just know it was brought up. Don't worry about where exactly. Like, just know it was brought up and it's tied to, the whole argument about internet shortcomings, internet instruction shortcomings. So,
Mhm.
straightforward.
Yes. Okay, let's finish up paragraph 5 here. It says Jonathan identified the 5 following potential problem areas regarding web-based instruction. And this is all a quote from Jonathan Daly. So A, the credibility of web information. B, computer network reliability. C, computer availability for students. D, differences in student technological skill. And E, lack of ethical knowledge of students regarding use of web information. So, okay, this is specifically quoting Jonathan Daly that clearly agrees that there are problem areas and that maybe we need to improve the internet before it can be widespread or used in a widespread context. Um, Again, same thing that we've been talking about. We're visualizing. We don't necessarily need to write all this stuff down. We don't need to highlight it and come back to it later, but still pay attention, right? We're tying this individual, Jonathan Daly, with this idea from, was that paragraph 3? Yeah, paragraph number 3. Um, and really, I think this whole paragraph has been an extension of paragraph 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would keep track of forward from paragraph 4, daily in paragraph 5 in case they refer to them.
Hmm.
Outside of that, just internalize, visualize. It should be easy to read and take all this information in.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at paragraph 6. It says, um, a distinction needs to be made between deterrence in reference to A, institutional approval of internet-based instruction, B, initial course development, and C, problems that arise for both students and faculty as the course is being taught. Okay, so we've got even more lists. We're saying that we need to make a distinction between these two, um, right? A deterrent. Presumably, we're still talking about problems with the internet. Um, I feel like this sentence is a little bit less clear. Like the passage has been pretty direct so far. I get that we need to tell the difference between these things, but I think we're probably going to learn a lot more as we continue reading this paragraph.
And this is kind of a harder sentence to understand, so
Exactly.
it doesn't seem too important, but I would still understand it to the best of my ability.
Yeah. Okay. Institutional approval is perhaps the biggest problem for internet instruction. Beautiful. Thank you. This is why you keep reading if you get a sentence that's a little bit more complicated. This is now very clear. Institutional approval is the biggest problem. Boom.
Right. Clear,
Easy, simple,
simple.
clear. Yeah.
We absolutely need to keep track of this, right? It's
Yes.
not like the other sentences we've read.
Hmm. Very direct, very simple. Okay, Paula Maddox stressed that, quote, university administrators often do not see the need for providing resources for information technology and related in-service training. So Paula Maddox, this individual is presumably agreeing with that statement or supporting the statement that approval is the hard part. And we're supporting that, and it's fair to say that because we're saying administrators don't see why it's important. They don't see why they need to provide resources to help train people for internet-based instruction. So again, approval is a problem, and we need to tie Maddox to that idea.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, in fact, a lack of formal technology training for teachers was one of the major deficiencies found in the survey of academicians by Liza Vodanovich and Valen Piotrowski. Um, okay, so basically, we need technology training, but we don't get it. So again, presumably coming from our polematics sentence, we're not we're not getting the approval for the training, and that's a problem. So approval is the biggest problem for
Yeah.
internet instruction.
Yeah, so far, just keep track of these big names, right? Ford from paragraph 4, Daly in paragraph 5, Maddox in paragraph 6. These
Hmm.
last names aren't really people that are referencing anything. It's like more of a like the author is just pointing out they did some sort of survey. So
Yeah.
that's not really there's no opinion there. So I keep track of names that present opinions. Whether that opinion goes with what the author's saying or against, it doesn't matter. Anyone who brings up an opinion, I need to keep track of that person. And so
Yes.
far, we're keeping track of these names.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're down to our last paragraph. Let's see what we've got. We see obstacles related to internet-based teaching, and we have a lot of parentheticals here. So actual or perceived may be clustered into one of four groups. Institutional, for example, financial support and incentive systems. Instructional, for example, time commitment and interpersonal interactions. Technical, which is equipment reliability and software adequacy. And personal, faculty student technological competence and attitudes towards acceptance. I'm getting that this passage author loves lists. They love lists.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
like the 10th list that we've gotten. Um, but we're characterizing internet obstacles. Um, and to me, I don't know about you, Jack, it kind of just sounds like there are a lot of different obstacles. This is not one specific thing that's creating a problem. There's lots of different layers to this, right? We might need more improvements. That's what
Yeah.
I'm just taking from the idea of having a list like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You got the gist, right? Like, okay, yeah, all these things mention, okay, weaknesses with internet instruction that kind of
Hmm.
by the argument that the author's been making, right? So, like,
Yeah.
someone might read this passage and go, wait a second, what's the argument? What's the main argument? I think it's pretty clear. It's whatever the author's been focused on for the latter half of this passage, right? Which is internet
Hmm.
instruction needs to improve before it can be widely adopted. Uh,
Yeah.
and yes, the author did mention it's impactful. Yes, the author did mention computer-based, stuff is the most important,
Hmm. Or beneficial.
most beneficial. But it's still not trumping this argument, right? This argument
Mhm.
is more important because it's been found pretty much for the entire passage, half the passage, right?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
absolutely. Okay, last sentence. It may be the decision to use web-based teaching approaches rests largely on the shoulders of individual faculty. We get a semicolon here. So we're saying that the faculty has to do this, right? Okay, that seems pretty new. The faculty is the one that has to implement this, but we'll finish up the sentence. It says this is especially true since incentives in colleges and universities to motivate traditional faculty may be largely lacking. That part, I think, kind of feels like the paragraph before, but that doesn't take away from the new component of this, right? We don't have incentives to do it. That kind of sounds like the approval aspect, but we're stating that because of that, there's the individual faculty is responsible for implementing this or for training themselves, right? It's on their shoulders. Is kind of what I'm getting for this.
Yeah, exactly. We never talked about individual faculty, so it's kind of
Hmm.
going in more specifically about the faculty, but going into it, we have to understand that. So I think that is important to keep track of for sure.
Yeah. And that's the end of the passage. So throughout the passage, as we do in our strategies, right, we've been reflecting on what would be the main idea. But let's summarize it for any student that hadn't seen it before. What do we want to remind ourselves of when we get to the questions that come with this passage?
I
What's
think
our most important?
yeah, I think the most important argument for sure is that internet instruction needs to improve before it's widely adopted.
Yeah.
Like that's the argument. That's like if you go in with that argument throughout the entire all the questions, you'll probably get 4 out of 6 right, right? Or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
however many questions there are tied to this one.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get like a majority of them right. But if you want to get everything right, you have to understand exactly what they're saying in the sixth paragraph and the seventh paragraph, right? That institutional approval is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And then also this idea that internet instruction is left to the individual faculty, right? That's
Hmm.
also a very unique argument in the last paragraph that we should keep track of. So they could test us on the bigger argument or these more smaller arguments that more or less support the bigger argument, right? That there are
Hmm.
challenges, but specifically, what are the challenges? Institutional approval, right?
Hmm.
Or, that's based on the individual, the faculty member.
Hmm.
So, and that's really it. I mean, usually the easier the read, which I think this was an easy read, the longer the passage, the more arguments that you're going to be responsible for. In this case, there's also longer lists of stuff that we need.
Yeah.
But overall, that's how I would read it, right? And I think you did a beautiful job there, Molly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point that sometimes the easier passages are a little bit longer. There's more arguments. Sometimes also the questions are a little bit more difficult. So for anyone who's listened all the way through, you now know what we would call the main idea, and you're ready for the questions. Okay, so again, just to remind you, we do this passage is the daily passage for July 23rd. If you're watching this on July 23rd, you can find the questions on our website, or you can navigate to the description wherever you're watching this episode, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube. We will have the link to this passage in the description. You can click on that link. It will take you to this page. You can complete the questions. It's always good to do so after listening to a CARS reading skills workshop because you're able to test how well you understood what we talked about. And because you now have a much more thorough, in depth understanding of the passage, you're able to really zone in on how you're approaching the questions, right? You understand what's important from the passage, from this conversation. Now you get to really test your ability to like work through the questions, the answer choices, use process of elimination. So please take a sec, take a couple minutes, attempt the questions, take a look at the solutions. And test yourself. See how ready you really are for cars. And again, if you want more information, if you want more support, if you want to learn more about the mapping strategies, come see us in our free classes. We do them every single week, and you'll have the opportunity to chat with an instructor live, which is a huge help, and hopefully get some valuable pointers as you continue along your cars journey. So thank you guys so much for listening. This was a super fun read. Thank you, Jack, for joining us as always. And we hope you join us for the next one. We will be talking about a passage called Teenager Health. Be pretty different from this one, but should be pretty cool as well. So have a wonderful rest of your day or week or month or whenever you're listening. Happy studying, and we hope to hear from you again soon.